downtown Armory at 1 o'clock. That what you sent that to me today. I don't see anything on your phone. You know what I'll do? I'll check. Oh, okay. That's right. And I'm almost sure that that's the case. But if you need to leave early, let me know. It's lightning and it's nice, right? No speakers tonight,
I'm going to try to call her.
I'm not sure if she opened it up. I think this is now.
How are you?
I know, with the new seating, we have like count microphones or something. What you saw before this was original to the 1972 construction. So it's not like we're like changing the furniture every 5 years or something. Stop spending on it. This is probably part of this capital improvement plan. Is Everton in Albany? Georgia said the food club testimony. I'm happy to go on these events. I'm the Albany lobby. So, you gotta be here.
Hey there.
How are you? I'm good.
So you want me to come in like sometime next week for us to encounter?
Whenever you let me know. Okay. You let me know.
And it's shocking.
And
You know what?
you let me know, and or send me an invite. When's good for you? Let me know. Okay. All right. If you're flexible, whenever, I'm here all week. Okay. And your research is February 18th, right? 8 o'clock. Yeah. Okay. And I'm gonna email Tom. I'm gonna do that today, but time got away from me.
I was looking at that. Her background's the same as mine. Yeah, if you look on the wall, on the website, her white
Good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. Today is February the 6th, 2019. And you are, if you didn't realize it, you're at a Board of Education meeting. And as always, we begin with approval of the minutes. I need a motion to approve the minutes from September 20th, that's Finance, October 11th, Community and Intergovernmental Relations.
I don't have a packet.
Ms. Scott? Commissioner Hallmark doesn't have a packet. Again, that would be the minutes from the Finance Committee meeting of September the 20th, October the 11th, Community and Intergovernmental Relations, October the 16th, Finance again, November the 14th, 2018, Finance minutes, and December 13th, 2018, Finance. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes? Moved by Commissioner Powell, seconded by? Anybody want to just say?
Second.
Thank you, Vice President Elliott. Any questions or comments regarding those minutes?
For myself, I wasn't here for the first one, so I can only speak to December 13th.
Okay. So you were going to record a vote for all but September the...
For none of them except for December 13th.
You got that, Madam Clerk? So all those in favor of approving the minutes as described, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
We've recorded Commissioner Davis's vote. Anybody else have any objections to any of those minutes? All right, those minutes have been approved. The next item on the agenda is, as is always the case, oh, I'm sorry. Forgot to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Reverend Powell.
That's okay.
That's elevated
Power
you.
if you want to.
Commissioner Powell, since you're closest to the flag, why don't you go ahead?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, so we have no speakers addressing an agenda item. The next item on the agenda is item Roman numeral number 4, acceptance of the action plan for the Distinguished Educators Report. Can I get a motion to, advance or discuss Resolution 637? That's in your packet. That's Resolution 630, is that right? Yeah. Yes, 637. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Commissioner Hallmark, seconded by?
Second.
All right, so any questions or comments regarding Resolution 637? I just want to very briefly say, and there aren't really sufficient words to describe the thanks that I believe I'm communicating. I'm going to take a leap of faith here on behalf of the entire Board of Education. Notwithstanding how people may vote, I hope at least, all can appreciate the kind of work that went into producing this document. I should first begin by thanking Dr. Aquino, who inaugurated this process. It was challenging at times. I'd be the first, and I'm probably not the last, to admit we got off to a very slow start. But as is often said by athletes and scholars and community activists, it's not how you start, it's whether you finish. Now, by the way, we are not finished. This is actually just the beginning, but I think it is fair to say, at least from my perspective, that this is a document that reflects the diligence and persistence of an entire community of educators. It is by no means perfect. It doesn't take a rocket science to figure that out. Anything done by human hands is never perfect. But I think it is a good start. I would note for those who don't have a physical copy of it, it is, at last count, it is 109 pages long, and
110.
110 pages long.
There's a backside.
It is described very accurately in the introduction, which is the page after the cover page. And I want to, again, go back to this issue of thanks. No matter what you think of the document, at least from my vantage point, I'm very honored to be able to say that I was in the position of being able to watch the diligence and the care and thoughtfulness at which folks attempted to make this document better each and every day and opportunity that they were given the blessing to do that. All one needs to do is compare it to its original version, and you all may remember the vigorous and rightly concerned comments about the first stab at it. and it was difficult to say the least for everybody. But how the document ended up, I think, reflects that good work. So specifically, I would like to thank Beth Massetti Miller, Cecilia Golden, Barbara Dean Williams, who's not here. And I trust that Cecilia and Beth will do what is necessary to communicate our appreciation to all the other people that I know really worked on making this the document that it is. I also, of course, should thank our new superintendent, Dan Loengard, and his chief of staff. I know Linda Simmons. I know they were in an awkward position, but provided guidance and direction that was needed in that period of transition to assist us in that effort. And lastly, I would, and certainly not least, I would thank my colleagues who took on a very difficult task that not too many districts have done before and came up with something that I think, and I know some folks may disagree with me on this, that can serve as a model for how one might respond when you're given the charge of responding to a Distinguished Educators Report. I think I looked at Hempstead's report, and it was like 20 or so pages. I think Buffalo was, and don't quote me on this, I think Buffalo's like 40. And I'm, you know, again, I realize people may disagree with this assessment, but I'm actually very proud of this document. It not only includes a detailed description of how we should respond to Dr. Aquino's recommendations, but it's more than that. It has timeframes and calls people to the task of meeting those timeframes. So again, on behalf of the board and those that will have an opportunity to vote on this and those that will be affected by it, and that's thousands of people, I want to say thank you. Anybody else? Commissioner Hallmark?
Yeah, I just want to echo your sentiments. A lot of really hard work was done. I want to really appreciate the administration, cabinet members, and my colleagues for working on this. I'm proud of this document, and I think we did a good job. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Hallmark. Anybody else?
I'd like to read a statement. I'd like to read a statement eventually, but I'm not sure where we're at right now. So.
Now is as good a time as any.
What we're doing now is taking statements. If you'd like to do it now, or you want to wait, and then we'll vote.
Okay. So I did also want to thank the staff for their effort in writing this document. But unfortunately for me, I was hoping that we could have used this document to get more support from the state in regards to how we need to go about our negotiations with our collective bargaining units. And I did put forth my concerns or my suggestion and my recommendation to input throughout the document different areas where we have some significant recommendations that we will not be able to fulfill unless we negotiate it appropriately with our unions, and that did not make it into the document. So unfortunately today I won't be able to support it.
I too appreciate the efforts that all persons contributed to putting this document together. But for myself, I also can't support the document. And I'd like to read a letter that I plan to share and send with the Commissioner Elia.
Can I ask you the point? Do we have any technical folks that can turn up the microphone? Judith is right beside me, and she's so soft-spoken I can barely hear.
I can try to speak louder.
Could you? Because I don't see anybody going to the key.
You want me to speak from down there?
No.
That's fine.
You just get a little closer to the mic.
Okay, I'll just try to get closer to the mic. Okay. Dear Commissioner Elia, my name is Judith Davis, and I am one of the commissioners of the Rochester City School Board of Education. I have had the pleasure of meeting with you as a member of the Take It Down Planning Committee, Faith Community Alliance, Movement for Anti-Racist Ministry and Action Coalition. I joined the board this year, 2019, and have had the honor of serving the community for approximately 5 weeks now. I was not yet a member of the board when the Board of Education was reviewed by Dr. Jaime Aquino on your behalf. Therefore, please be aware that Dr. Aquino's comments regarding the board are pre my term. It is my understanding that you initially wished to receive a response to the Distinguished Educators Report by January 8, 2019, which would have been only 8 days into my term. Dr. Aquino advised you that an additional month would be needed, and he obtained an extension until February 8th, 2019. I have sought to understand the distinguished educator process, and I have met with Dr. Aquino both as a commissioner and as a member of a community coalition to receive information regarding what criteria you might expect a commissioner to use to determine whether a district response is or is not acceptable. I was provided with the following criteria from Dr. Aquino. He asked me to consider, do the action steps in the response address the recommendations in the Distinguished Educators Report? Does the district have the capacity to deliver? And is there ownership and buy-in from all persons who will be expected to implement the action items? In regard to the first question, I do not believe the action steps fully address the recommendations in the Distinguished Educator Report in 3 significant ways. First, many action steps are based on documents that do not presently exist in any usable format per Dr. Aquino's report. During a board meeting at which district personnel presented the beginnings of their response to the report, I asked if the strategic plan, district comprehensive improvement plan, and all the school improvement plans now existed in a usable format, as many of the action steps in the response are based on the existence of these documents. At the time, the response was no. Weeks later, in an email to district personnel, I asked the following. When it comes to the strategic plan, which Dr. Aquino states has not been released, the district plan and the school plans, do these documents now exist in a format substantially different from that initially reviewed by Dr. Aquino last year? And the response was no. The documents exist in the same format as reviewed. This is very problematic, as many of the action items outlined in the district response refer to these plans and assume their existence and usability. For example, under finances, Dr. Aquino recommends that the district develop a long-term financial plan aligned to district instructional priorities. However, this cannot be accomplished until there first exists a district strategic plan that outlines our instructional priorities. The Chief Financial Officer cannot provide proper guidance on funding until the strategic plan is released. Per Dr. Aquino, this discourages the formation of any real ongoing financial plan. Dr. Aquino has stated that the strategic plan does not currently contain enough detail to be implementable. The district plan does not list the steps to drive improvement, and the school plans are not used as planning tools. It is also unclear if following any of these plans will actually lead to improved student outcomes. In sum, we cannot meet the dates for the completion of any action step in the response that is based on the existence of usable plans. Therefore, I have asked district personnel to add a footnote wherever a strategic plan, district plan, or school plan is mentioned, so all understand the plans need to be developed before the action step outlined in the district response can be implemented. The second significant way in which I'm unable to support the plan, Dr. Aquino also stated that institutional racism must be addressed. Yet throughout the response, I did not locate any anti-racist framework. I have asked that everywhere cultural responsiveness is mentioned to add the need for anti-racist measures across all departments as well. We must identify and address policies, practices, and procedures across the district that by virtue of following them lead to inequitable outcomes by race. And thirdly, teaching and learning is the heart of any school district. However, in response to Dr. Aquino's recommendation to establish an instructional framework that describes the district's vision for quality instruction, the Danielson Framework for Teaching was uplifted. However, the Danielson framework is an evaluation tool. It is utilized to evaluate educators after the teaching moment. Yet it has been presented as the tool to use to ensure rigor, high expectations, non-negotiables for teaching, etc. I understand providing educators with an assessment of their instruction and immediate feedback after the teaching moment to help an educator improve. But if per Dr. Aquino's report, there's no curriculum, wrong curriculum, or curriculum that is not culturally relevant, or I add anti-racist, and there's lack of guidance about what to teach, when and how to teach, and the best tools for assessment, it is evident that efforts to ensure rigor and high expectations and alignment with standards needs to take place before the teaching moment. Why are we using a tool that is dedicated to after the teaching moment? Who is responsible for checking before the teaching moment on a regular basis that the educator has curriculum that is aligned across grade levels and content areas, is using the best assessment tools or instructional strategies, and is obtaining student data to inform decision-making? Evaluating how well the educator fared after teaching is needed, but we need even more attention in light of the above before the educator steps into the classroom. Second criteria, does the district have the capacity to deliver all that's promised in the response to the report? To answer this question, I looked to the district's historical record as outlined in Dr. Aquino's report in the area of special education. Dr. Aquino attaches recommendations for restructuring special education provided to the district at the district's request in 2008, 2013, and 2017. Dr. Aquino states, though many of the problems described here are longstanding and systemic, the district has failed to solve them. While all stakeholders interviewed were keenly aware of the problems and some suggested ways to solve them, in most areas, action to address the problem remains a goal rather than a reality. The issues identified in this report have been described in numerous earlier reports. For example, at the district's request, there have been several reviews, as I just shared, yet only minimal progress. The inability of the organization to address these issues reflects a lack of urgency, a lack of capacity, a sense of complacency, or a combination of all three. In the 2017 review of special education, Dr. Judith Elliott stated, there is a moral imperative to immediately address the system-wide inequities that are evident across students, programs, and academic and behavior outcomes. Moral applies to a personal character and behavior, is concerned with possessing the capacity to distinguish what is proper conduct, to distinguish between right and wrong. It is 2 years later, and we are under the imminent receipt of a consent decree. This means from January 2017 to present, this administration has not possessed the capacity to distinguish what is proper conduct towards our children with disabilities. If consent decrees, corrective action plans, investigations are not sufficient incentive for this district to distinguish between right and wrong action, what exists presently that hasn't existed over an 11-year chronicled history in regard to children with disabilities to convince me now that this administration suddenly has the capacity to implement its response to the Distinguished Educators Report? Though many posters throughout the district display the strategic plan vision, there is no clear strategy on how the plan will improve student outcomes. Many staff members, per Dr. Aquino's report, seem unaware of the stated vision, goals, and initiatives. In addition, most stakeholders, including the board, administrators, teachers, parents, and community members, lack any real understanding of the serious implications of the structural deficit. Some seem to believe that funding will always be available, though the chief financial officer has shared with the board that if the expenses continue to grow faster than revenue, the district's finances will hit rock bottom within 3 to 5 years. If we do not address the structural deficit, the significant budget cuts that will be required would eventually eliminate essential services. Lastly, in speaking with Dr. Aquino, I learned that due to the district not having a system-wide curriculum, some schools did their own research and they selected plans and assessments themselves. I learned this because I asked why Dr. Aquino recommended allowing schools waivers from adopting the district's chosen curriculum once determined. He shared we should not penalize these schools for seeking these materials when no guidance from the district was forthcoming, as long as the curriculum meets the district's curriculum criteria once developed. However, I'd still like, as the board, to be apprised of schools requesting such waivers because that request should decrease if we're following Dr. Aquino's recommendations. And the third criteria was, is there ownership and buy-in from all the persons who will be expected to implement the action items in response to the report? In my email to the board and administrators, I asked, were these responses, was this report written with the knowledge or input of all stakeholders, students, parents, educators, principals, department heads, homeschool assistants, paras, etc.? Overall, the response does not read like the persons in charge of the day-to-day, on-the-ground work were consulted. If the response was developed without their input or buy-in, how is the district going to procure their buy-in after the fact? I also, during a recent board meeting, asked the board if the community was brought in to help them frame responses, and if, as a board, they met with Dr. Aquino to have him unpack his findings and recommendations. At the board meeting, Commissioner LeBron responded to my inquiry and stated the board never met with Dr. Aquino. In light of the criteria I was given by Dr. Aquino to use to evaluate the district response, I must vote no to the current response. I hear so much that everyone here loves our children. We must understand that love at the institutional level consists of the proper use of power. There's nothing wrong with power if power is used correctly. There's a long line of people from the New York State Department of Education to the Board of Regents, Rochester City School Board of Education, the superintendent, deputies, chiefs, supervisors, teachers, everyone that's a part of the educational system. How have you used your power up until this point? I want to have compassion, but I hear an inner voice saying, Judy, they've had opportunity to distinguish between right and wrong and to use their power correctly. At the institutional level, love without proper use of power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is love correcting everything that stands against love. Power properly understood is nothing but the ability to achieve purpose, and our purpose is to provide all students with a high-quality education. There is a source of power that has never been allowed to live. It is the only source of power historically that has had the ability to make an institution such as the Rochester City School District say, yes, we'll do what's necessary to improve student achievement when the district wants to continue to say no. That source of power is the community. We need to bring together a collective of city officials, board members, central office personnel, principals, teachers, caseworkers, psychologists, social workers, parents, grandparents, students, business persons, nonprofits, faith communities, and concerned everyday citizens into a unified body of one mind and heart whose aim is to equalize power between the school and district administrators and low-income parents and community members, the latter of whom, as Dr. Aquino notes in his report, feel marginalized or powerless to affect change that actually results in improved student outcomes. Some of these thoughts are not my own. You may recognize them. They are taken and adapted from the current situation from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s Where Do We Go From Here? There is a culture of fear here in the district. That means there do exist a number of individuals who wish to participate in the changes necessary, but who are oppressed. We need a superintendent who is not afraid to take measures to let truth tellers know they are safe under his or her tenure. We need a superintendent who wants parents and community to genuinely be an intimate part of change strategies. We need a superintendent who will not capitulate to every demand of our bargaining units. We need a board who will stop waiting for the cavalry, i.e. the state, to come in and save us. We need the board to come into its own and understand that we are the cavalry. If only we would hold the superintendent accountable and establish SMART goals and objectives with the superintendent and hold him or her to them. I do not wish to see control taken away from parents and community who, up until now, have been made to feel they are unwelcome intruders in the education of their children and who have been blocked from any meaningful engagement in the development and execution of strategies to provide a high-quality education in the Rochester City School District. Former President Barack Obama said, "Good intentions are not enough when not fortified with political will and political power." The district has not displayed the will to make necessary changes, and the public has been blocked from using its political power to exert pressure from the outside. Community organizing for school reform brings together parents, youth, and community residents and institutions to engage in collective dialogue and action. It builds grassroots leadership among parents, grandparents, and youth. It builds political power by mobilizing large numbers of people around a unified goal and purpose. It focuses demands for accountability, equity, and quality for all students. And it aims to disrupt long-standing power relationships that produce failing schools in low and moderate income neighborhoods and communities of color. It uses the tactics of direct action and mobilization to put pressure on decision makers when necessary. I would like to see a district that welcomes community organizing for school reform.
Bless you.
It is my understanding that this has never been done. Studies show that community organizing efforts sustained at a high level of intensity contribute to notable gains in student learning. Instead of a state or city entity taking over the schools, I would like to see the community given an opportunity it has never been given before, to become that stabilizing force from the outside in that exerts pressure to forge within the district the political will to fulfill its moral imperative to provide a high-quality education to our children. I would be more than happy to participate in such an effort. Should you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me, Judith Davis, Commissioner.
Any other comments? Just very briefly, because I know we have some other stuff on the agenda. Let me say that both Commissioner Shepard and Commissioner Davis make some sound remarks. I know Commissioner Shepard is concerned about the impact of decisions and action steps in here and how they are connected to or may be connected to decisions that we have yet to make on collective bargaining negotiations. That's a legitimate point. And Reverend Davis, Commissioner Davis makes a number of good points. One of them, which makes a lot of sense to me, how, just accepting the question, how can you devise a financial plan if, assuming that this is correct, you don't have a viable strategic plan? That's a legitimate question, and it deserves a legitimate answer. The problem is there's not a lot of time to answer these questions. Now, in the context in terms of how this thing was set up, if you look at, for example, I'll just take your example, Reverend Davis, page 20 and 21 of our response. Because of the issue about the viability or the legitimacy, excuse me, for those who believe these are legitimate strategic action plans, one was submitted in 2014 by Dr. Vargas, and another one was submitted by Barbara Dean Williams in 2018. That one was never finally approved by the Board of Education. But let's just assume for a moment that it is a legitimate argument that both those strategic plans are inadequate. The format of this document suggests how we respond to that. If you look at the language, it says revise, this is on page 21, revise and update the action plan. The next bullet, again on page 21, ensure that all strategic action plans are revisited every 3 years and address the following elements. So to Commissioner Davis's point, how do you have a viable financial plan without first having a strategic plan? This document suggests how you get there. We did not have enough time, 2 months, folks, to revise the strategic plan and then revise a financial plan. There just isn't the time for it. And by the way, nobody up here, including Dr. Aquino, set out these, what I believe to be unreasonable timeframes. But we did the very best we could, and I think it's a good job, for describing how we would get to the points that you make, Commissioner Davis. And one other thing, and I just, Commissioner Shepard, I think you make a good point. I'm sorry it was not incorporated. By the way, I'm getting a nod that it was or not? The point about the unions. Can you speak to that? If folks need to understand, to the extent that something was not incorporated, this is what I would call a living, breathing document. I would imagine if the commissioner finds this response satisfactory, she will give us the opportunity to take into account additional changes. And in fact, it would be silly for us to believe that this was it and we could write no more. There's not a person in here who believes that this document doesn't need to be revised. Incorporating some of the stuff that Commissioner Davis said, and certainly incorporating some, if it hasn't been already, that Commissioner Shepard has said. So I want folks to understand that as voluminous as this is, and there is no DE response, a response to a D's report, that is this voluminous and, in my opinion, this detailed. You want to talk about accountability, this document ensures some level of detail to ourselves and to others. But to the extent it's not satisfactory, as suggested by Commissioner Shepard and Commissioner Davis, we will get there. We will get there. And also, let me add, to the extent it doesn't include the voices from the other community, again, 2 months. 2 months to put this together. It will go to the commissioner. We will have additional opportunities to get the other voices involved. And just one last point. Commissioner Davis, you talk about power. I believe true power comes from the ability to communicate. And to communicate and to collaborate, you need time. You were not given that. Commissioner Shepard was not given that. Nobody on this dais and in this building was given that. But by providing the kind of response that we did, detailed as possible under the circumstances, we can give ourselves additional time. There is power in communicating. There is power in collaborating. But I would remind my colleagues, I'm going to just speak the truth, and if you want to reference the report, the way that happens is you got to communicate with us, right? I'm going to speak honestly. We can't be hearing this stuff for the first time on the dais. I'm just telling you, that's not how you communicate. Even in a time crunch, which none of us create, if you want to talk about, address the dysfunction that some folks see, we should not be vetting our concerns, and I'm not saying anybody did it here, at the last minute. If there's a concern about something, it should be brought to the table in advance, and if you still feel the way you feel, then obviously the First Amendment gives you the right to express that. But there is power in this board up here. But the power is not in the titles, it's not in the money that we make, it's not even the statutes that I talk about. Our power is in our ability to respect each other by communicating. This document should have been, but still can be better if we communicate and we collaborate in advance of getting up at this beautiful dais. Commissioner Hallmark?
Yeah, I just want to also support some of what you're saying, President White. Our job is to look forward. This is an excellent blueprint for us to move forward. It's not perfect, but it's a great blueprint, and I also see it as a living document that we continue to improve on. I did want to respond to one of your comments that I believe is incorrect about the Danielson framework. Teaching and learning, saying that that's only for after the fact. The Danielson framework supports both formative and summative assessments. So it's useful all throughout the process of teaching and learning. So it is completely appropriate.
I was going by the document that I had. So.
You want to go last? You want? Sure. Willow, go ahead. Thanks.
Well, what Superintendent Loengard has to say may take precedence over my remarks, but I want to honor the words that went into Commissioner Davis' letter. I feel like the best way to honor those words is to give it more space and silence. Because there's a lot of truth there. There's very little I could argue with. I would, though, say around this, the district improvement plans and school improvement plans that, and the complaints isn't the right word, but observations thereof. I believe that this document is our new strategic plan and supersedes everything else that has been written by previous superintendents. I was listening to NPR today, and I heard interviews with some senators, U.S. senators, who said about the deadline for coming up with an agreement on the border wall and keeping the government open, that nothing quite sharpens the mind like a deadline and allows them to move forward. And let's face it, the U.S. Senate hasn't accomplished a whole lot, so if they're actually taking a deadline seriously, then they're experiencing something that we're experiencing here. I've seen our senior administrators wrestle with what went on the page. I've seen them have to pull out of deep inside of them the words that would make this more than lip service. And I believe that in that process, we achieved a level, they achieved for themselves, a level of consensus about what has to be done that will survive beyond interim superintendents and our next superintendent. This is the blueprint. And the district improvement plans will be rewritten to match this document. And then the financial impact will be rewritten to match those district improvement plans. And then we will have a budget that supports the education. But as I said, I want to support the words and affirm the words that you read, and ask that if we could take that document and instead of it being a reflective document, present it in a way that as a manifesto of what we're going to do moving forward. I think that that would be a profound leadership tool that I think that my colleagues could get behind, and as a reminder with each of our decisions, to ask the administration, is this the best you can do? Does this respond to all of the elements that you've articulated in it? I think there's great value to the points that you make, and I would hate for that to end as a minority report to our response to the distinguished educator. I think it deserves more than to be the minority report, if you will. to this effort. The resolution that we're going to be asked to vote on simply says, the resolved part, hereby adopts the plan annexed to this resolution and authorizes and directs the president of the board to execute and submit the plan to the commissioner on behalf of the district. If it would be helpful to add an addendum that's specific, or an amendment that specifically articulates our willingness and desire to amend and update this, I'm happy to entertain that if it would make a difference. But we have to, the first thing we need to do is meet the deadline and let the distinguished educator and the commissioner tell us that whether it meets their expectations. If they kick it back, and maybe they will, we have an opportunity to do a rewrite and go deeper. But to suggest that we can't ever get there, we might as well, you know, fly the flag upside down and declare ourselves in distress, because there's nothing, you know, it would be an admission of defeat, and I'm not prepared to admit defeat. So, thank you.
I swore I wouldn't say anything, but those who know me know I can't keep quiet. I actually, a couple of thoughts. One is both to Commissioner Shepard and Commissioner Davis. I agree with everything you said, except the thing about Danielson, which I'll sit and talk with you at another time, that it actually is a complete document. The issue really is that Dr. Aquino put together the what. He said, these are 84 things you need to do. What we put together was, how are we going to do it? Who's responsible, and when is it going to get done? The reality for all of us, and even the people working in the district, is getting it done is a thing that's been frustrating. Frustrating to the point of 10, 20, 30 years, because we know that we have not delivered the goods either in Rochester, Syracuse, Buffalo, and that. For our students, we should have been able to find ways to deliver the goods, not to half of them, but to all of them. That being said, I thought the 84 things that were listed in Dr. Aquino's are a must. That's what we have to do. To what Commissioner Shepard said, I won't bring you a contract unless part of the negotiations is for the kind of non-financial things that need to happen so that we are servicing our kids. And Commissioner Davis, I agree, except for the Danielson stuff, but it really is what, that's the reason we're doing what we're doing. And I do believe that we can start to accelerate our work to make sure, instead of trying to find who's at fault, trying to accelerate our work, that our classroom instruction is stronger, our administrators are stronger, and that we move ahead. So for 4 days, oh, and finances, I've spent 4 days, and we can do all this and cut our finances so they are a balanced budget, because we can't spend, unlike the federal government, we can't spend more than we have coming in. So I'm ready to move ahead regardless of even, I shouldn't say the commissioner's approval or whatever, that this is our work and we're ready to move ahead. So thank you for...
Commissioner Shepard.
Yes, I just wanted to respond to a few things that you said, President White. And I know that you didn't direct them to anybody, but you did put it out there. So I just want to clarify that, yes, we only had 2 months. That's a very short amount of time for all of the things that we were expected to do in this report. which is why I begged from day one that we hit the ground running, and that did not happen. However, I didn't take that personal. I moved forward because the work had to get done. And even though the last minute, I was on a conference and I had to go through 100 pages to really read through and give edits on a conference where I'm all day, every day, or all day, every day that I was there. I was learning about other things on equity, and then I had to leave after the conference to come back and read this because the job had to get done and I couldn't make excuses. I was put in that position, but I took it very seriously. The issue came when I was finishing up. I was on page 75 of giving my edits back. I was told by the administration, or the team was told by the administration, that they would not be able to get to all of our edits. So at that point, I'm like, what is the purpose of me going above and beyond, and it's not even going to get implemented in the plan? And then I said, okay, I got to put that to the side because we got to get this in on time. I sent out one very, very glaring edit that I needed to have happen in this report, which is the fact that we need the state to be behind us, because Commissioner Elia and the regents talked about that at the local level, we aren't going to be able to do this alone. We know that the collective bargaining unit agreements are problematic for what we are trying to do. And if we don't put that in this report and the state doesn't back us on that, where does that leave us? Negotiating until you're here till June, and then the next person that comes in, we're going to be stuck in a cycle that I do not want to be in. And so I really wanted us to take this document as an opportunity for us to, at the very least, because there's a lot of things that I had that I needed to have changed in here, but at the very least, that we address the fact that the collective bargaining units are hindering us from doing some of these very significant things that we need to have happen immediately. And I was hoping that at the very least that would have made it in there, but it did not. And so unfortunately, I just cannot support this document. But I just wanted to make it very clear that you all put me, and I know all the other individual commissioners have been putting in some work as well, but you put us in a predicament where I was stressed out. Like, I was crying tears, but I had to get through it. And here I stand, and I still didn't get at least one thing that I needed to have happen, which was the most important in my eyes. And so I just cannot support this document today.
Okay, without trying to change your mind, because that's not what my comments are based at, and I apologize for asking if you could state what specific action step. You could see these, for anybody not looking at the report, what I think is really good about it is it has action steps in black bullets and then descriptors that are sort of blank. And anybody's looked at this, and some of you have not had a chance to see it yet. But Commissioner Shepard, and again, this is probably putting you under pressure like you've been put under pressure for the last couple of weeks about this whole thing. But if you could provide, because listen, I've tried to say, and I think our superintendent said, and other people said, this is a living, breathing document. There may be edits later on that I'm sure the commissioner is going to say, oh, you got to do this, you got to do that. And we may feel like there may be additional edits later on down the road. But right now, this thing hasn't been submitted to anybody. Beth and Cecilia are sitting over there with their computers. There's absolutely no reason why we could not. I don't know if, and I know people have things to do today as you did yesterday, but Commissioner Shepard, quite sincerely, if you could, and I'm sorry, I might have missed that edit, if you could provide a bullet, what would it say?
All right, so I got some feedback from Carl in regards to me requesting that that the administration go through the entire document and add in the column of resources needed, that we talk about collective negotiations in regards to some of the bullet points that were throughout the entire documents. But since you're asking now, I can bring up one, which I don't have it in front of me, my work that I did.
Okay.
But I can bring up one because Carl suggested that instead of us using collective negotiations, that we substitute that with bargaining unit contract, and I was fine with that, is what I responded. Teaching and learning is one of those areas that is critical to what we need to be doing. There's things in here that talks about mandatory PDs. That's definitely one that would need to be negotiated in the contract, because we know that we have already been having issues with getting certain PDs that we definitely need in our district around racism, specifically anti-racism professional development as being mandatory. Let's see, let me just go through here, because I don't have my notes, but I will go through and find some other bullet points, but there's bullet points throughout the entire thing, but that is one. Another one is,
Commissioner Shepard, if I can add, and again, I apologize that maybe I didn't get this right, but would you, for example, say a bullet point is, we will negotiate, again, each bullet point begins with a verb, renegotiate contracts so that boom, boom, boom. Is that what you're talking about?
that's fine.
So, and now Dan, it would be Dan's responsibility to carry that out. But again, what we tried to do collectively as a group is come up with bullet points that were followed by verbs and that were ultimately followed by start dates and stop dates. So if for example, and this is part of the communication and collaboration that we got to get better at, because that's what good policy comes from. That's where power comes from. So we have to listen to what each other have to say. And by the way, I know people are maybe thinking, okay, let's call the question. But again, we have to figure out how we're going to be better at government. And sometimes you have to take the time to do that. And I know you're not going to change your vote, but I would like to see, Commissioner Hallmark, could.
Speaking to the negotiating,
Yeah.
Can you just give a timeline for the public about like where you're at, when that starts, when it's going to be wrapped up, like so we have a sense of the timeline of that?
Well, first of all, we shouldn't be talking about
Exactly.
negotiations
Exactly.
and with cameras on. And we're talking in generalities, and there's some talk about negotiation before June and some after, depending upon. And what Commissioner Shepard has said is really true, except that the state can't really help us. That negotiations is local. And as our governor found out when he decided to take unions on and all that. But the issues will come to me first and then to all of you as to whether you agree on these. And in fact, it'll come from you about go negotiate this. We want this. And that's where this comes from. But unfortunately, it's all local, and I wish it would come from the state, but I'm telling you, they don't get in that, they say go forth and get what you can, but it comes from you guys.
No, and I got you. And this is not really directed towards you, but that is true, and I know that to be true. However, the commissioner said, and the regent said in a community meeting in regards to what we needed to do to turn this district around, that nothing was off the table, was Commissioner Ilya's words. And Regent Norwood's words were that this is going to take more than a local vote, and that is going to take state law, which is what you're talking about, how state is not into it. And I wanted us to use this as an opportunity to say, okay, we heard you. This is what you said, and this is what we're putting before you. So are you going to help us? Because we're going to need their help in regards to this. So.
While I would, and Commissioner Shepard, I hope you believe me when I say this, I wish we had more time to talk about this, but there's another pressing situation, which I'll explain to you offline, that we have to, unfortunately, move this conversation along. But again, I would remind everybody that the comments that were made by Commissioner Davis and Commissioner Shepard are appreciated. I think everybody's affirmed that you made some excellent points, but the time just does not allow us to do that. But tomorrow and the day after, this document can become even better. So, yes.
Excuse me 1 second. Beth, you have something that is very germane on this issue.
Well, I will be brief, and certainly we can go ahead and add, but just for this evening, just for clarity on the, oh, I'm sorry, is that better? On the issue around what Commissioner Shepard mentioned, on pages where it appeared that collective bargaining...
What page are you at?
74, 80, and 83. We had bargaining units before, but the agreement was to have it read as collective negotiations.
Okay.
So it may not cover the whole document, as Commissioner Shepard may want it to be more umbrella over the whole document. However, I just wanted to point out that they are included in the comments and the resources, just for support.
Thank you.
And to Commissioner Powell's point about Commissioner Davis's point, no one in their right mind would take this as a manifesto, just a mere objection. This document obviously is going to be received by the superintendent and his staff, and there'll be ongoing conversations about how to improve that in light of what Commissioner Shepard has said and what Commissioner Davis said. It's just, again, for whatever reason, we didn't have the time to include it all. But I want to end on a positive note. And again, some might disagree with this. This is a good document. A lot of people put a lot of work into it, and they should be applauded for that. And their work is appreciated. And I want you to know that. So we have to get around to voting. Are there any further questions or comments regarding Resolution 637? There being no additional comments, let's do a roll call vote. All those in favor of Resolution 637, let's begin with you, Commissioner Powell.
Did someone move it already?
It was moved and
It was moved
seconded,
previously,
yes.
yep.
I vote yes.
Commissioner Davis?
I vote no.
Commissioner, Vice President Elliott?
Yes.
Commissioner
Yes.
Hallmark?
Yes.
Commissioner Shepard?
No.
I vote yes. The ayes have it. Thank you very much for coming. Okay, next we have, actually, we have Resolution 637. Could I get a motion to discuss Resolution 638? Just a motion to discuss it?
So moved.
Been moved by Commissioner Powell, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Any questions or comments regarding 638? Be mindful, this does relate to a particular person. If there were specific questions about it, we'd have to discuss it in the executive session. Are any questions or comments regarding 638? There being no questions or comments, all those in favor of Resolution 638, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it. And 639, we're going to consider an executive session as that relates to a student suspension. I'll take a motion to go into executive session later on when we finish the balance of our agenda. The next item on our agenda is board discussion of board goals for 2019-2020. Commissioner Shepard, along with others, but especially Commissioner Shepard, has rightly tried to keep this on the front burner. And it is appropriate that we talk about it today, even if it's in a limited context, because this is actually, is this your first meeting at the dais? Okay, so do you want to begin the discussion, Dan, or?
I'm happy to, but the first step is really getting from the entire board what your priorities are. I have been listening at these meetings, and I have four that stand out. Number one is the racial equity issue. To me, it cuts across all lines of what we're doing, of hiring, of evaluation, of curriculum. It just cuts across all of them, and I'm looking for the specifics of things we need to do right away. The second is, not surprising, the DE report, and I do see it almost like the strategic plan, or at least my plan, that we need to get all 84 things done. My third is the budget. I've already started. We're in tough shape, but I am convinced that we can still deliver a quality education and make the cut so that we have a balanced budget. And the fourth is the special education department. That needs major work. I've already met with Keisha in that, and we are about to begin major changes in that department. And money or no money, those changes need to be made for our young people regardless. So those are my four major pieces, but we have certainly the capacity to take on many other things that the board wants.
Any response or Commissioner Hallmark?
And that was narrowed down from about 30?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other comments?
I'm just remembering work that the board did many, many years ago with a consultant, Dick Palermo, who described, the vital few, right? The important many, and then your third tier of all the distractions and little things that keep you from paying attention to those important many and those vital few. So being able to hone it down to those 4 points will really help us keep our eye on the prize. And when Dick Palermo talked about evaluating our meetings, he said that our evaluation document should ask us to be able to cite which of the vital few were addressed in that meeting. And if that meeting did not address the vital few, then it was a wasted meeting. So I would suggest that we modify our meeting evaluation form to include either an open-ended question, which of the 4 vital few was addressed at this meeting, or list those vital few and ask people to put a check mark next to it as a way of just raising our consciousness about whether we're paying attention to the right things.
Any other comments? I would just add, and I assume that this would not be a separate goal, and it's not going to surprise many of you to hear me say this, but graduation. June 2019, August 2019. This is all important work. The D's report, racial equity, budget, finance, special education, and that all feeds into graduation rates. But it can be easy to, in working on these huge issues, to maybe not pay attention to, because you're looking at the long game in this stuff, systemic change, to sort of miss the student who's struggling for that last Regents exam. And I know that's not your work, but that is the work of the chiefs, and then that becomes the work of the principals and the teachers. So I said to your predecessor, I was interested in having a meeting, an officers meeting, a leadership meeting on where we're at with the graduation rate. Where are our kids this day, February 6th, and what's the chance of them graduating in June? And I was a bit concerned that, for lack of a better phrase, the long-term goal, which can ultimately improve our graduation rate, that we might lose focus on. Sure. I apologize, yeah. But I liked Barbara's phrase, every student by face and name. And when you're looking at big documents with names of big organizations with big budgets, it's easy to forget the student who's struggling to pass that Regents exam. So I will be asking for an officers meeting, a leadership meeting on where our students are at. And as you, as your predecessor and her predecessor, Linda Simmons, we are not going to take our eye off that prize. Because let me just say, as the kids say, keep it 100. The reality is, the reason why, I'm going to just keep it real with you, the reason why we got this report is because our graduation rate was so bad. That's what brought the attention on us, right? And it should, because that graduation rate, although it has improved, steadily improved, the kids that don't graduate, by every face and name, those are children that are frustrated in their futures. And to the extent that we do this stuff, and by the way, the results are not going to be perceptible initially, right? People need immediate gratification. Not only parents, but people in Albany, legislators, commissioners, they want to see those ELA and math scores go up. They want to see graduation. That's why we're here, let's be honest. And so we have to have the lens and the ability to keep our eye on both prizes, those students and the long game. If we don't do that, it doesn't make any difference how much we're, and I'm assuming that the commissioner, if she accepts this report, is going to make sure through Dr. Keno that we're doing what we say we're going to do. But in the end, if we're not graduating students, even though this is going to have long-term impact, the gavel is going to come down hard. Let's just be honest. I know it. I've been in this long enough to know people look at numbers. And those numbers are children. So we should be looking at those numbers. So I would ask, and I know it's something that you're going to do, that as you look at these things that do impact our graduation rate, please keep real-time focus on our children. Any other goals? Dan, I want to say, I think this is right. Dr. Hallmark suggests, you've whittled it down from 39, 59 goals to 4. And these are probably, you want to talk about graduation rates?
Well, 5 now, I guess. But other than that.
Our graduation rates will go up if we learn to better accommodate and resource our special needs students. That's a big part of our graduation. So I think these are racial equity. If we start giving our kids the opportunity to take advanced placement courses and not suspending our kids because of the color of their skin, we're going to increase our graduation rate. So I appreciate that. Anybody else want to add or subtract from these goals? All right. Again, all this is fungible. These things can change. So if anybody down the road wants to say, Dan, we need to do some flexing here, we'll do that. All right. Next item on our agenda is CTE and ELA presentation. Who's doing that?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Board members, I have 10 minutes and I'm going to present to you on the Career and Technical Education Program and the English Language Arts Program in a nutshell, answering the 3 questions that were posed by the board. So I want to begin by saying that for both of the programs, we're focusing on rigor, reliability as we move forward, meaning that we know what students are learning and how they will be assessed, relationship building through our different relationship programs addressing culturally responsive teaching and anti-racism education. And we're doing all of this for one purpose, to accelerate student progress so that we can improve our graduation rates. So rigor, reliability, relationship building, all for the intention of accelerating student progress because we have far too many students who are underperforming and far too many who are not graduating. So on your slide, and I don't know if you have it in front of you or not, beginning with career and technical education, we provide this education beginning in the 7th grade formally. At the elementary schools, we have partnerships with communities, including, with our community, including junior achievement, where students learn about careers. When we look at our data from 2012 to now, in our formal CTE enrollment, we had 170 students in 2012-2013 school year. It has gone up each year, and this year, as of January 30th, we had 4,167 students taking career technical education courses. In 2017-18, 28, and this year we have 36 who are projected to complete the program. 30 of those students are with the Rochester schools generally, and 6 are with our East EPO.
I'm sorry, are those students or programs?
Programs, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
thank you.
Programs. Thanks. New York State Education approved CTE pathways. We have had 11 in 2016-17, 12 2017-18, and 14 now. The New York State approved CTE pathways must meet, our programs must meet standards approved by the state. We develop our programs in concert with teachers, administrators, and submit them so that we do have buy-in. The courses are to demonstrate a level of rigor that prepares students for either college or career readiness.
Dr. Golden, are these two charts to be taken together? That is to say, are only about half or less than half of our programs actually New York State approved?
Registered programs, yes. You can come up. Yes, but they are. We have both registered programs and unregistered.
We refer to them at the secondary level. We have schools that have careers and majors in place. Not all of them are New York State certified CTE pathway. And one quick example of that will be P-TECH. P-TECH is not a New York State certified CTE pathway, but it's definitely a program or a pathway of majors, of thematic majors that the students are completing through that program.
Could you just make sure you state your name so that...
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
I'm Danielle. I'm the Executive Director for the Department of Career Pathways.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm hearing a distinction that's new to me. I assumed that if it was not New York State approved, it was because maybe we didn't have the right teachers, certified teachers in front of those programs, but you're saying that it is, that there are, that in fact New York State has no, it's not that we don't have certified teachers, but that New York State does not have a P-TECH program?
It's two things I would want to say quickly. For a pathway to be certified by the state, there's a particular criteria. And we can make that criteria for you. It's 3 course credits. They have to have a 4+1 assessment of the state, a project that the student completes, and you submit that to the state. Of course, you have business partners and articulation agreement with the college. That signifies the CTE pathway. We have certain careers or majors in place, a thematic focus at a high school. It may not be CTE related, and we've given you guys a copy that you can see in front of you of where we have programs and pathways in our district. Some of those programs are still starting out with their sequence and will be submitted for the state. So when Dr. Golden shared the data at the end of this school year, we'll be increasing 2 more New York State approved pathways. Of course, the goal is to have quite a few of them New York State certified, but some programs may not be a CTE pathway. But it is a major, a thematic focus that a high school student is completing in the secondary school.
So question, how does that impact a student who's on a pathway that is not, what was it, registered? Certified, thank you. What impact does that have on their credits or their graduation, that kind of thing?
They still have the same requirements for graduation as the same of a student that's in a CTE pathway. With the new regs of the CDOS option 1 and option 2, those students could still be taking elective courses or a thematic focus. Let's say it's at SOTA or IAT, but for that 5th Regents, they can use the CDOS option. It's called a CDOS 4+1. One of the 5th Regents that they can replace where they can get that credential is in that option 2. So they still could take care of those advantages. I'm so sorry. So they still could take advantages of those requirements for New York State. And I can make a sheet that's clearly to say what those different paths are within for CDOS.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Rhonda, does the 36, remind me if the 36 includes the 14 that are approved?
So 36 programs, we refer to it as pathways or majors in the district. 30 are Rochester City. 6 of them are at East. Of those programs, 12 of them at the end of the school year last year were New York State certified. And 2 of those are at East.
Okay, so the 14 is included in the 36?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, Rhonda, I just wanted to be clear. You said that P-TECH was considered not to be certified?
P-TECH is its own program, but you may not see it on the paper as a CTE certified. P-TECH is a different type of pathway. But from a New York State, P-TECH's programs have different New York State requirements.
Gotcha.
But if you go to the CTE, or I should say the state's website, that's not under the CTE pathway. It's a recognized program, absolutely.
Okay, so Rhonda just covered the option 1 and option 2 options. We're talking about next steps. We want to ensure equitable access to CTE courses for all students regardless of classification. That is something that the district has to address. We want to make sure that students who are classified with special needs have equal access to the CTE. We're to collaborate with transition specialists to continue providing support to secondary school designees, collaborate with the registrars, those who make the master schedules to make sure that students with disabilities are appropriately scheduled, increase work-based learning experiences for all students, conduct professional development for our CTE teachers and specially designed instruction, host job readiness workshops for students, implement the results of the Southern Regional Educational Board's curriculum instruction review for CTE, and continue our data collection and reporting.
Dr. Golden, can you provide us, not now, later, how many students with disability and English language learner currently attend CTE program?
Yep.
Thank you.
The department is planning to utilize Microsoft's Imagine Academy and virtual courses, engage more community partners as we develop courses, and also engage students around what are the real jobs that await them in the community, and provide job readiness training and exposure for our students. It's called Link Community to Classroom. Student advocacy, continuously listening to the voices of our students, and also to engage more with our parents, because in our CPPS, the Career Pathways to Public Safety programs, for example, police, criminal justice, fire, 911 communications, emergency medical services, which is reflected on the paper I handed out or distributed, we partner with the city of Rochester. These are real jobs with very good paying jobs that students don't always choose. And so Rhonda and I had a conversation. I said, Rhonda, talk to the students, but talk to mom and dad, families as well, because sometimes they need to help the children make the right decisions too. And then some feedback, because we did survey students. Students found important accelerated learning opportunities to earn college credits in AP level classes and programs. Sometimes students in AP classes and those who teach them don't always see the value in CTE courses. So that's a enlightenment, engagement opportunity for us. All right, I'm going to move on to ELA. Because the question about how many students participate, at the K-5 levels, we have 12,496 gen ed and students with special needs in our courses or in our classrooms. K-2, we have right now 6 core literacy programs. We have K-2 culturally responsive literature, 6 self, family, and community in a few schools. We have 6 supplemental literacy writing programs, 13 intervention programs in K-2. At grades 3 through 5, we have 7 core literacy programs, 6 supplemental literacy/writing programs, 16 intervention programs. All programs are to be aligned to New York State Common Core, and of course we are making the change to the next generation standards. For student performance, At K2, we use the NWEA at or above norms. In fall 2018, we had 25% proficiency, meaning levels 3 or 4. Student performance grades 3, ELA state exam in the spring 2018, 17% were proficient. And for 2019, we have a goal to improve at least by 10%, but want to make sure our acceleration exceeds that. 2019-20 proposed programming for K-5 is to adapt curriculum. I believe I spoke to the board earlier about looking at curriculum that we currently have in our schools. Schools are submitting their curricula to us for review by the Program of Teaching and Learning and the Curriculum Council, and we will then adapt them so that we have something of rigor, culturally responsive for our students. Grades K-5 is our plan. We're adopting we would like to adopt a common K-2 reading series for the fall of 2019 if we can. We would like to provide intense PD on acceleration strategies for intervention, target tiered intervention programs that would be fewer in number but much more focused than we currently have. And then I'm going to keep going. ELA grades 6 through 8, current programming. We have 5,633 students. The core for them, for the most part, is being used is the New York State modules. We do have IB at Wilson Foundation and 3 supplemental writing programs. Initiatives focus on culturally responsive pedagogical practices and texts right now. Professional development is embedded. Professional development for approximately 20 schools, which means our teaching and learning EDs go to schools and work directly with teachers there, reflecting on practice and giving them immediate feedback. We're involved in the National Writing Institute at the U of R. 60 teachers are participating. We have 3 intervention programs, and student performance was 11% proficiency spring 2018. I'm sorry. 2019-20 proposed programming for grades 6 through 8 is again to plan to adapt curriculum, continue focus on culturally responsive teaching and pedagogical practices, incorporate more social emotional learning and literature into the literature, encourage students to express their narratives or experiences in creative and multimedia ways, again being culturally responsive and culturally relevant in the classroom, provide intense professional development on acceleration strategies for intervention, expand vertical teams to prepare students for advanced placement, and student performance increase by at least 10%, but we're planning for more. Grades 9 through 12, we have 7,656 general ed and students with special needs or with disabilities. The core is now, the focus is on New York State modules. We have 2 AP classes at Wilson, I believe, and an IB program at Wilson Commencement. We have 18 electives. We have AP classes, AP courses. It's not just 2 classes. I don't know what she was referencing there. She's out of town. We have 18 electives, 2 supplemental programs, and then we have 3 intervention pedagogical practices. We're increasing opportunities for quarterly credit recovery, and of course PD. Student performance in January for 2018 Regents, 31% passed, and in January we had 41 passing rate for the Regents. We're proposing to adapt curriculum for the high school, really at 7 through 12, looking at our EPO staff from East presented to us last week, us meaning teaching and learning. We offer AP English courses in every high school, which is grant funded. We'd like to increase the opportunity for students to take IB English by increasing the number of students in the current classes that we offer because there's room, augment the elective English experience, course experience, continue focus on culturally relevant pedagogical practice and text selection, provide intense professional development on acceleration strategies for intervention, and provide PD and curriculum aligned to next generation standards. What we have addressed in this document or in this presentation regarding ELA is embedded within the DE report and our response to the DE report as well. Thank you.
Any questions or comments? Commissioner Shepherd?
Yep, I wanted to put a couple of questions on the record in regards to our CTE and the pathways not being certified. So I wanted to know how do the pathways that are not certified, how does that impact our state funding for CTE? And what are the barriers to those pathways and why they're not certified? And if we are working on them for all 36 of them to be certified.
Commissioner Shepherd, did you want a response today or were you later?
No, I mean, if they had an answer today, that's fine. If not, it's something that they can get back to, that they can get back to me. Okay. And then on page 14, where we talked about our 9 through 12 programming, I wanted to know if those numbers could be separated out from general education students and then students classified as having special needs. I'm just interested to see if we have any students that are in special ed or have special needs that are being promoted to AP courses, because that does not mean that they can't achieve higher. It just means that sometimes they need supports. And so I'm just interested to see if any of our students are being pushed in that manner.
Ms. Scott, I don't, this is your first time in a while being in this role. I would think, I don't know what you think, Dan, but these would be good questions for the question log, or, yeah. Can you communicate with Commissioner Shepherd later and make sure you have those questions? We'll put them on the question log, and I don't know if Dr. Lee communicated this to you, but we started a new practice of logging in when the question came in, and logging when the question answer is provided. Commissioner Hallmark?
And just one for Ms. Neal. Would you mind doing asterisks next to the ones that are certified? Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Dr. Kino?
Dr. Golden, just clarification. When you talk about the NWEA for K-2, where it is 25% proficiency, is the NWEA administered in kindergarten?
No, it should have been grade 2. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because it says K-2 and
K2, but I should have put 2.
That's only 2. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you very much. We appreciate that presentation. Next item on the agenda is City of Rochester Report 1819, SRO and literacy aids.
I have the update on the literacy aids. Currently, we have what we consider the literacy aids with the agreement with the City of Rochester is you could do the next one? I'm sorry. Thank you. Sorry about that. We have the IROC Ready Summer Reading Program at our rec centers, and we have the Rochester Public Library Learning Program at our rec centers. Thank you. Appreciate that. We currently have a total, or what would be each year, a total of 40 students. We have 20 at IROC, which is the rec centers, 20 at the Rochester Public Library. Working papers are required for these students. They're recruited by the director and coordinator for one of the aspects is in her portfolio is Nydia Padilla, who's here with us this evening, who does the recruitment and coordination with the city. They are hired by each location in collaboration with the City of Rochester and the libraries. So responsibilities include for IROC lesson planning, building rapport with students, and engaging in different literacy activities. And at the library summer learning program, we have literacy activities that they're engaging in using technology, project-based learning. They have approximately 32,000 contacts over the course of the summer. The next thing and the last thing about the summer literacy aides at the rec centers and library, they are paid minimum wage. The total cost to the general fund at this point is $109,000. And as a point of information, 3 students were hired last year permanently as an opportunity for our students out in the community. Right now, we are examining the current budget with the superintendent, as you know, to bring forward a balanced budget. We'll be looking at all these aspects of the budget process.
Yes, Commissioner Powell.
My recollection of the summer literacy program, because it was a discussion item in our finance committee last year, is that this is entirely grant funded. Is that correct? No?
No, it's out of the general fund, Commissioner.
So, yeah, so the discussions we had in the finance committee then was kind of an open-ended question, and I'll just carry it forward to this body. And that question is this our primary mission? And as we go, forward in analyzing our budget, I know it's not a big number, but it's these, 100,000 here and 100,000 there. Pretty soon we're talking about real money. So I'm just putting that out there to my colleagues and I don't know what guidance you need, Dr. Loengard, Mr. Loengard, to make the decision whether it's part of your recommendation for this next budget or not. The next thing is the question around rec centers. Are we renting space? Are we paying city employee salaries? What are we
So the
paying
funds
for?
specifically go to the students for their work at the site.
Oh, so that's like the summer literacy program. We have to
Exactly.
we really need to decide as a body whether this is our core mission or whether it's something that perhaps the city of Rochester can take up as an employment program, and instead of us paying for it.
Okay, Mike is going to cover the SROs.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Just real briefly on the SRO contract, once again, we brought this to your attention for approval.
Speak into the mic. Mike.
Okay, how's that? A little better? All right. Once again, the contract was brought for your approval in August. Prior to the start of the school year, we have currently 12 SR school resource officers, mainly at the high schools and 1 at our all-city location. The contract is just a shade under 1.5 million. It's like 1.4 and change for as an annual agreement. And we did solidify with the help of Carl's team of solidifying the attendance rate and the language around vacations and so forth, so that all the buildings were covered at all times. Those are really the highlights from this year's contract. It's pretty standard what we've been doing over the course of the last several years.
All right.
Mr. President?
Yes, Commissioner Powell.
Mr. Schmidt, were you able to identify when we were first held accountable for paying for the SROs, when our first contract was?
I could certainly find that information for you pretty quickly.
Okay.
I don't have that at my fingertips tonight.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. All right. That would move us to consideration of resolutions, but we've already considered and passed 637 and 638. That would leave us with 639, which is a matter that requires that we go into executive session to discuss the potential disciplinary imposition of discipline against a particular student. Can I get a motion to go into executive session?
Mr. President,
yes,
it's
sir.
also a matter of litigation.
Thank you very much. So I need a motion to go into executive session to discuss the potential discipline involving a particular student and a matter, going to executive session for the purpose of discussing a matter involving litigation.
So moved.
And moved and seconded by?
And second.
Commissioner Davis. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Before we go, I again can't say thank you enough. I want to say thank you on behalf of the board to Francine Scott, who has stepped in and trying to help us, and also to Dan and Linda for stepping in as well into a very challenging role. And I sincerely mean this. We really do appreciate you guys stepping up to serve again. It's really appreciated. And by the way, it feels good. It feels very comfortable to have you both here. So thank you very much.
We're always going to end at 7:15.
Always. He says we're always going to end at 7:15. But with this new bi-weekly special. All right. Anybody who wants to see us adjourn out of public session, you have to wait until we finish with the executive session, and that may be a bit. But we'll do that downstairs. Good night, everybody.
Night.